Hi, join me today as we make some topographic inspired art. Now, let's dive in. Hi, Sea Rockers. Jumping right in today into our topographic art. I have a 12-inch wood round that I primed, and then I just traced it onto some paper and made an interesting design that I liked. After I did that, I went ahead and cut the pieces out, or actually I cut one piece at a time, and then I traced it onto my round, just like this. And then I just continued to cut and trace until everything was transferred onto the wood round. And if you would, please splash that like button so we can keep doing more. And of course, as I get to the last piece, I realized that I could have done the old school pencil on the back trick and just traced everything, which I did in a next project, which you'll see. But anyway, this is another easy way to do it. That way you don't have all these loose pieces everywhere, because I like to keep my templates personally. So I had kind of a love-hate relationship with this part of the project. This is like my second go around, and I just ended up using modeling paste in a pastry bag and piped everything on. So I take the pastry bag and make sure you put it in a tall cup to use it. And then I'll show you here the last couple islands, how I just piped it on. Now, once you get your concoction of whatever you're choosing is into your bag, then you're going to want to get a few of the bubbles out and work that stuff down to the bottom. Now, I am not a cake baker by any means, so I suggest you use the Google machine and figure out how to do this. Basically, the idea is to get as many bubbles out as possible before you start using it, because then otherwise you have little blips of air and it ruins the piping. So basically, you're going to get as much down to the tip as possible and then seal off the bag. I might have done this a little backwards, but anyway, I had to look it up the first time I did it, so don't be afraid. Once your piping bag is ready, then you can go ahead and start piping onto your project. That's a little air bubble right there. I will be honest, it is a really tedious process, but the outcome is so pretty. So once I got my piping down, then I took a wet paintbrush and I went ahead and I smoothed things out. I smoothed the edges, the inside and the outside there, and made it as neat and pretty. And remember, you're going to have resin that's going to go between there, so make sure there's enough room to get your resin in. Also, keep in mind while you're doing this is not to squish down or pat down your piping, because essentially what this is going to create is a dam or a wall to separate your resin. Here's what it'll look like before it dries. Just make sure you give it a good 24 hours before you start sanding. And gosh darn, that modeling paste dried all kind of shriveled up. So I took this Dry Dex by DAP. It's one of those spackling compounds with it's pink and when it's wet, and then it dries. When it dries, it's white. And I tried a few different hacks. This was the best one that I had around the house. And essentially what I found worked best is I rolled it into a little snaky thing, took a wet paintbrush, and smoothed that out. And it really did help fill in those cracks and make things rounded. And it will also raise up your little walls or dams or whatever if they're too low. Once dried, it looks like this, and what a huge improvement and great technique that turned out to be. So now I'm going to take some little emery board file thingamajiggers, and I'm just going to smooth things out, get the roughness off, and then I'm going to put another coat on top. So satisfying. I took the modeling paste and watered it down with some water, and I'm using it like a paste, and I'm going to brush it right over those ridges, and I'm going to fill in the gaps with this. It just smooths things out and makes everything unified and pretty. Once that's dry, take one of your little nail files and get anything that you missed. And look how pretty that looks. And then after that, we're going to put a couple coats of gesso on top. Once everything is dry and cleaned off, then we're ready for some resin. On this particular piece, I didn't want to use tape. I used something called liquid latex, and you can find it on Amazon. So I'm starting with the largest part first, which is going to be our dark blue. So I'm putting down some navy acrylic paint because I don't want the white showing through on our resin. Just make sure to keep it off of the white ridges. Once your paint is dry, then you're ready for some resin. Today we're using art resin, and our mica powders are from Eye Candy Pigments. And I'm in love with this blue. So just spread your resin out, make sure and get your outer edge, and be careful not to pour too much resin in because you only want it to go to the base of your little ridge or dam. And resin tends to move and expand, and so don't put too much on. Anyway, torch your bubbles out and cover it up to keep the dust out. So our color palette here is a blue with complementary gray as a neutral, and then in between are blue grays. So it'll be really pretty. But can we just stop and admire a moment that beautiful blue and how perfect it is with that art resin? Oh my gosh. So we're gonna fill the islands with this gray, and I got a little carried away and I put a little too much at first. And so just again, spread it out and be cautious in how much you put in at first. Now we're on to a lighter blue-gray. This is actually a combination of the darkest blue, a white, and a smidgen of gray in the Eye Candy mica powders. Just be super duper careful as you go through and pour your resin between your dams. So we're just going to continue the process until all the spaces are filled in. And then you'll cover it and wait till morning. So what I'm doing right here is I'm taking a toothpick and running it on that little dam to try and get some of the extra resin off so it doesn't go over the edge. Once our piece is completely dry, we're going to go ahead and take this liquid latex off of the back. And the easiest thing to do is just push it until you get a hold of it. It can be a little struggle. But anyway, you're just going to pull the latex off. And yes, it is a lot more efficient in this case than trying to deal with tape and sanding edges and things. And oh my goodness, look at the shimmer of this blue-gray beauty. Hey, thanks for joining me today. I hope you're inspired to try something new. I want to invite you to join the Sea Rocker family, to like and share and subscribe and share with your salty friends. And don't forget to follow me on my other social media platforms. Thanks for watching. Until next time, go beach or go home.